All right. Good morning and welcome to another morning episode of the Liberty Dad Podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. I am your host, DL, America's most objective libertarian. If you're tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time so early. All right. We're back at it. Day two. Day two after that long hiatus that I had. It was a good break. All right, so we're getting into it today. We're going to talk about Mamdani. We're going to get a little bit of a small, short update. Nothing major. I'm not going to do a deep dive or anything. Before that, I'd like to talk about some announcements. So tomorrow, I'm going to debut my friend Christina Lucastro. We're going to be doing a new series called Human Frequency. We will be talking. It'll be more like I don't want to say personal things per se, but think of it on that level where we're talking about, okay, let's have a discussion on the human emotion, the human element, right? There's a lot in the space of talking heads, especially politics and culture. There's a lot of like wagging and just kind of like, no, this is bad, this is good, this is great, you're a terrible person. And so we're going to try and talk a little bit more on the level of human emotion. And we're not going to get all sappy necessarily, but, try to bridge that gap a little bit. So look forward to that. That's going to be tomorrow and then every Wednesday thereafter. Then Thursday, I have I have a guest, Thomas Lane. He's running for U.S. Senate out of Iowa. He's the Libertarian candidate. He will be on Thursday morning. So we'll have a discussion with him, see what his plans are to become the Libertarian senator for Iowa. That'll be great. And then next week, is it next week already? Is time going by that fast? Yes. Next Monday, the 12th, at what time was it? I think I have it set at 7:30, but I may be off on this. I'll have to go look at my notes. It's been a minute. Um, I am doing now this Dad Talk Roundtable. And the Dad Talk Roundtable, that is just basically where I get some guys that I feel have a good head on their shoulders, and we talk about topics that are related to being a dad, being a man, or being a husband, or all three. So look forward to that. That's going to be Monday night. So that's the second Monday of every month. That's kind of a new project that I've got going. I've got like a couple new projects. I've got the new project with Human Frequency and my friend Christina tomorrow, and that's every Wednesday. And then on the second Monday of every month, I've got the new Dad Talk series for for the roundtable. A little fumbling there with the words, but anyway, so those are some announcements. Look forward to doing that. Hope you guys look forward to it as well. All right, let's get into this. Mamdani. So if you remember, I did a whole bunch of videos on Mamdani before he got elected. And one of my gripes with people, particularly his critics, and it really goes with any critics, actually, but one of my gripes was people were focusing on the trivial things. They weren't focusing on what matters. You know what I mean? Like, they were like, oh my gosh, he's eating rice with his fingers. I can't believe that. What is he, a beast? And it's like, well, a lot of people seem to like him. Perhaps, throwing it out there, you focus on his policies. And a lot of people weren't really, all they were trying to do is they were trying to like beat him from afar with scary words like, oh my God, he's a communist. Well, turns out he's not, strictly speaking, in the formal definition, a communist. The more colloquial version, that we use all over the place, sure, but that doesn't have, that kind of has like a floating meaning, right? Like it means one thing to one person, another. So I looked at it and I said, number one, communist is kind of a dirty word, but he identifies as a democratic socialist. And when I say identify, like he had no problem telling people, I am a democratic socialist. Okay, well, he was telling you that. What does that tell you? That tells you if he's running for New York mayor. We're not talking about some like podunk town that nobody's ever heard of and has no power. He was running for New York City mayor, and he was getting a lot of traction. He won the primary, basically forced one of the candidates to run as an independent, and he gets on national television and goes on podcast, and he's telling people that he's a democratic socialist. What that should tell you is it isn't a scary word anymore. You can't just say, oh, he's a socialist, and people go, oh, he is? I better not vote for him. No, that was a selling point. So I want to talk about a little bit about his first week and what he's up to, what New York City might be in for. Now, I have to shorten it. So I was downstairs working, and I said, all right, it's time to go upstairs and plug in and, finish up getting ready. And I plug in, and wouldn't you know it, my computer crashed in the middle of all my work. So by the time I got it back up and got everything reset up, I had to cut some of the some of the content today, because I just was like, I was wrapping it up, but I wasn't quite ready. And then 7:30 rolled around, and I was like, all right, well, because of that little mishap, we're going to be a little bit on the shorter side today, but that's okay. Maybe I'll do a follow-up next week or in the coming weeks. Maybe I'm not going to do like a week by week, like, oh my gosh, what is Mamdani doing this week? But I do think it's relatively significant. So we are here going to keep up with what he's doing periodically and just kind of let you know and give you some of my thoughts. So the first thing I want to talk about today is he's got this new plan called regarding rental ripoffs. So let me play you this video, and I think this is going to be interesting to see how this plays out. So here we go.
Have you ever rented an apartment in New York only to find yourself not just paying rent, but application fees, amenity fees, credit score checks? In a city filled with old buildings that could use some tender-loving care, some landlords are taking advantage of the housing market to gouge tenants with outrageous fees, all while leaving them trying to survive in homes with collapsing ceilings and sinking floors. It's time for that to change. We need a citywide crackdown on rental ripoffs. We need to take on the indignities from those landlords who demand more than their fair share. That's why our administration is organizing a series of rental ripoff hearings in every borough. This is a chance for you and your neighbors to speak directly with us about how you're getting ripped off. For the first time, our city is bringing this discussion directly to you. And it's only just the start. We're excited to share more information about these hearings soon. In the meantime, start taking notes so you can share with us how you're getting ripped off.
All right, then. Now, as I mentioned in one of the several profile videos that I did on Mamdani's platform, there really is a landlord problem. Now look, don't get angry at me just yet, folks. Just take it easy. There are bad landlords out there. I will acknowledge that. I can't think of any that I've ever met personally, but I've heard about them. And so if you're a landlord and you have a tenant, and well, you know what? I take it back, actually. I have heard of some here locally. I used to mentor a kid, and they lived in a house, and there was like a hole in the roof or something like that, and they had a lot of trouble trying to get the landlord to come and fix it. Here's my position. If you're a landlord, the whole point of staying in a house is that you have a warm and safe place to live. And so I think there are some basics. Now, I believe, unlike, say, the Mamdanis of the world, that this is a contract between the individual and the renter and the landlord. Whereas he looks at it more like, hey, this is a contract sort of between the landlord and the renter, but it involves the government as well, and the government is a primary entity in this. I don't see it that way. I see it as the government, their job is just to mediate. Now, I have said, if we are to put some basics and say this, you have to do these things, like you have to put a fully functional roof on the house, that should be written such that it becomes an obligation from the landlord to the tenant. And so then if there is a claim against the landlord, that claim goes entirely to the tenant, not to the government. perhaps you could say, all right, well, you have to pay some fees if, you come to court. That means you're going to take up some court time. There's court clerks, there's a judge, and so on and so forth. So in that particular sense, I would say, yes, it would be fair to demand whoever loses have to pay those fees, right? But ultimately, what he's trying to do is effectively shift the contract between a landlord and a renter to landlord and government. And so I oppose this. And I don't know if you noticed in that little video clip, did you hear there was a word in there and then a phrase that he kind of snuck in there, right? He said, more than their fair share. That was his phrase. And then he said, gouging, right? These are very popular from people on the left to use. And from an economic standpoint, number one, I don't believe in price gouging as being a negative from the more colloquial sense. I look at price gouging as a natural function of a proper market. And that's a conversation we can have another day. But I just want to point out, he snuck that in there. He's like, oh, they're price gouging you. Well, what do we think of when we think of price? We think of somebody unfairly asking for money, which is weird because if you think about it, if I have this cool cup, right? It's a cool Liberty Dad cup. I want to sell you this. And I might say, well, I want to sell you this for $5. And you go, wow, that's a steal, DL. And then I say, yeah, but the lid doesn't come with it. The lid's an extra $3. You might say, well, DL, you're price gouging me. Like, that cup and the lid isn't worth $8. And I might say, well, it's worth it to me, right? And so this transaction is just simply a matter of what terms are we willing to make it on? Are you willing to pay the $8? Am I willing to take the $8? That's the way. You might negotiate and say, well, I really like that cup, but man, I don't think that lid's worth $3. Will you take $1.50 for the lid? And so then I might say, $6.50. All right, and ultimately, at the end of the day, and I guess I am kind of getting into it, apologies, but ultimately at the end of the day, what ends up happening is you decide whether or not whatever price that we can come to terms on, whether or not you want the cup more and the lid more than your money, and then I have to decide, do I want your money more than I want this cup? And that is how we make a transaction. So this is why I don't look at things as price gouging. I just look at it as, am I willing to pay that particular price for it? Will the market bear that? But then he throws in, he's like, oh, more than their fair share. Oh, well, what is their fair share of the, like, what does that even mean? And people aren't really asking that question, right? They just assume, and a lot of people assume that landlords are just wealthy fat cats walking around with monocles in their eye and a nice hat and a cane made fully of gold. I mean, that's how people portray landlords. And the truth is, a lot of landlords, like some 70 or 80% of all landlords, are just mom and pop landlords who have somewhere between 1 and 10 properties. So and I promise you, if you have 1 or 2 or 3 properties, you are not a fat cat. Okay? That's just go out, talk to a landlord, ask him about all the things that they have to maintain, right? Ask him about taxes and ask him about, all the different elements that go into what they have to do before they can present it. Now, again, that doesn't mean there isn't a problem with some landlords. But as I discussed when I went over his landlord issue, when I went over that part of his platform, one of the things that I pointed out is that government, specifically the New York City government, they already had things on the books and they were failing to even address them. They had backlogs. There were landlords that had already been in trouble, already been fined, and just simply weren't paying it. And it was like, well, okay, what are you doing about it? And they weren't doing anything. Part of the problem that they had, go look and just see if there aren't already rules that landlords are supposed to abide by. and then look and see how well they're already being enforced. If you're not enforcing the current rules, you are not in a position to say, well, we need to make more rules. But that's what they're doing. Now, I will say this. I said a moment ago that Mamdani snuck these words in, but that's not really true. He didn't actually sneak these words in. He just said them because socialism is out in the open and it is not a dirty word anymore. And now it's too late. Right? All the hand wringing about, oh my God, he's eating food with his fingers. And there was like on social media, that was virtually all I saw. He's a socialist. He's a communist. He eats food with his fingers. Okay, well, guess what? He's elected New York City mayor now. And now he's setting up so that in every borough, he can go and have meetings where people can basically divulge their grievances on rental ripoffs. And that's going to be whatever people say. And if he hears something repeatedly, there is a good chance that whether it's fair or not to the landlord, whether what it doesn't matter, if he hears something repeatedly, that's probably going to be something that hits his radar very quickly. So good job, conservatives, Republicans. Good job. Good job worrying about how the man eats and not worrying about his policies. And good job not offering a better policy and saying, you know what? He's right. There are some problem landlords. We do need to deal with this because this is, some of their behaviors are unacceptable. But you didn't offer anything better. I did. I had better ideas on my show. I mean, let me put it this way. I offered something. And I don't know if it would necessarily have been the best solution, but it was a solution, right? But I wasn't, again, I also am not running against him. I am not part of a political party that's I am, but I was not actively engaging with any candidates to help them get elected. I'm just a talking head. I can do and say whatever I want. And if I want to come up with like all kind of cool ideas that I think are neat, then I can, and people can listen to them and then turn the show off and go on about their way, right? Like there was no, and it's no harm, no foul to me. Like if you don't implement the ideas, you know what I'm saying? So you shouldn't be leaving the idea of or the notion of having good ideas to all the podcast bros. If the podcast bros are the ones that are coming up with the ideas, and you're the one that is working with candidates that are running campaigns, and you're not coming up with these ideas and trying to implement them, then guess what? You're going to lose, and that's exactly what happened. Now, what's interesting that he did in his first week related to this is he appointed Cea Weaver to his, what was it? What's the title of that? I keep forgetting the title of it. Let's see here. The mayor's office to protect tenants. That's interesting. But it gets even more interesting. So let me show you this video that was going around. And it's funny. I think it's funny that this video is going around now. Now that she's got the job. It's kind of weird. Like, what were you guys doing? Do you not, do the Republicans, and large and as well, the Libertarians, do you guys not do opposition research? So here's this video. And I'm going to qualify that opposition research here in just a moment. So here we go.
I think the reality is that for centuries we've really treated property as an individualized good and not a collective good. And
the what? Property. The problem. She's saying the problem here is that we've treated property as an individualized good, not a collective good. Oh. Remember, this is his new director of the mayor's office to protect tenants. She's telling you that property should be seen as a collective good. That's not a good thing, folks.
And we are going to transitioning to treating it as a collective good and towards a model of shared equity. will require that we think about it differently, and it will mean that.
Okay. She's right. If you're going to shift from looking at property from an individual good to a collective good, you're going to have to rethink it. And you might say, well, let's say you're not a libertarian. Let's say you're not somebody that's, Republican that likes the idea of, property and individual rights and stuff like that. Somewhere, maybe you're just kind of like, I'm curious. I'm socialist curious, whatever. I don't know. I want you to hear what she says next.
Families, especially white families, but some POC families who are homeowners as well, are going to have a different relationship to property than the one that we currently have.
Oh. Wow. So white people are going to have a different relationship with property than they currently have. And yes, some POC as well. See, all this time on social media, people were crying about dumb things. Eating, he's brown. Like some people, like who was there was a Congress member, Ogles, I think it's Ogles was his name. He was trying to revoke his citizenship, Mamdani's citizenship, and deport him back to the country that he was born in. Even though the man has lived here since he was like 7 years old, was born, basically not born, but raised in New York City, went to school, went to college, American through and through, even if he doesn't hold American ideals, he is still American otherwise, right? And I know there's a big dispute like, oh, well, you can't really be American if you don't hold. You guys don't have a good, solid list of what are the American ideals. So you can't use that because it's a moving target. If I talk to one person and I say, what are American values? They're going to list me a few things. And if I talk to another person and I ask them the same question, they might give me a different answer. There is no consistent answer to what American values exactly are. So you can't use that. But people were like, well, maybe we should deport him. No. You're trying to win by not doing the most basic function, and that is address the concerns of the people. He is now mayor in his first week, and the first thing he did was he came out with the video, and who is he talking to? Was he talking to other socialists? Not quite. Sort of. He was talking to people with grievances, people who feel like they've been cheated, who feel like the system isn't working for them. That's who he spoke to. Everybody else, his critics, they were speaking to nonsense. Instead of digging up information like Cea Weaver, and let me pull this up real quick. Let me see here. Let's go to this. I'm not going to pull it up on the screen, but I just want to go and read something to you. So what I'm about to show you in just a moment comes from an account run by someone named Michelle Tandler. I don't know who that is, but she said, a few months ago, I dug into Cea Weaver's Twitter history because she was Mamdani's housing advisor. So she posted this on January 5th, so yesterday. And she said a few months ago, she dug into her Twitter history because Cea Weaver, the woman we just watched, was his housing advisor. She said, I had a hunch she might get a position on his team. Well, she did. And she deleted her X account accordingly. However, I took some screenshots. Like, instead of doing Oppo research and saying, who are the people that he's surrounding himself with? What are they talking about? How likely are they to get a position if he wins? Instead of those conversations, instead of saying, here are the ideas that they're presenting, let's tackle them and let's offer a better idea. Instead of doing that, it was, oh my God, he's eating rice with his fingers. Oh my God, he's brown. Oh my God, he's a Muslim. Oh my God, he was asked where he would go, and everybody knew the right answer was you would go to Israel, and he said, nah, if I want to talk to Jewish people, I'll go to their synagogues here in New York City. which of course is the proper answer, by the way. Right? Like, he did the work and went out to the people and said, I've got your back. I've got ideas that are going to address the things that you're complaining about. And his opponents said, oh my God, he's a socialist. Well, the socialist won. How about that? So let's take a look at some of these tweets. I'm not going to show them all, but let's play some of these tweets that what is her name? Michelle Tandler put out. And by the way, if Michelle, you ever happen to be watching this show, thank you so much for doing the work that Republicans and other political operatives should have been doing. So here we go. So here we are. There is no such thing as a good gentrifier. Only people who are actively working on projects to dismantle white supremacy and capitalism, and people who aren't. She divided people. She said either you're a good person. She didn't say good person, but that's basically what she means, right? She's like, you're either dismantling white supremacy and capitalism, or you're not. Those are your options. By the way, I am not, because I think that capitalism is good and white supremacy is nonsense. What else did she say? Well, she said, instead of blaming folks for not having access to a mortgage in a rich neighborhood and all that comes with that, we could tax the rich, invest in the public good, stop all evictions, and fund safe, stable public housing for everyone. Happy Mother's Day. We're going to get into evictions here because I've got a little, I said something a while back, and it turns out I was right. We're going to talk about that. So she wants to invest in the public good. Of course, people on the left tend to do that, so that's not terribly surprising. But she wants to stop all evictions, not the bad ones, not the unfair ones, however that might be defined. She wants to stop them all. And she wants to fund, where do you think that money comes from? Safe, stable, public housing for everyone. It's funny. I remember people on the right whining about, what was that? The economic forum, that whole by 2030, you will own nothing and you will be happy. That's what you just got. She may not be necessarily on board with Klaus Schwab and the economic forum and all that, but she basically is saying the same thing. If you want to stop all evictions and you want to provide public housing for everyone, you are going in the direction where people don't own anything. If you are saying, hey, by the way, we need to rethink the whole concept of individual property, and we need to really move away from that and think of property as a public good, not an individual good, that is exactly, you will own nothing and you will be happy. It's exactly what that is. What else you say? Rent control and public housing for everyone, you guys. Rent control for everyone. That is incredible. Rent control is an awful idea. Think of it this way. We'll dismantle it in one quick sentence. All of the major cities that have rent control are also the cities for which they have the most problems with affordable housing. Do you think that's a coincidence? This is not a chicken-egg situation. The rent control caused that. How? If you go back and you look, you will find that once upon a time, affordable housing wasn't nearly the problem that it is today. That's not to say it's never a problem. There's always somebody that cannot afford either the home that they would like to live in or the home that might even be appropriate for them. Appropriate meaning like somewhere within a range of your economic situation, right? Like if you make $100,000 a year, you have some range of affordability. If you make $50,000 a year, you have a different range. And some people may not be able to. And part of that may be a variety of things, that the government has done, inflation, where they print the money, where they've made it more difficult for builders to build, more difficult for landlords to do things. So they basically, through their regulations, drive up the cost and then turn around and say, man, things aren't affordable. We got to do something about this. And then they go and they implement rent control. And then rent control creates yet more problems. And then they're like, man, we just need to do a better job. And then the cycle just continues. So for me, I look at it and I say, you guys are getting everything you fought against. You just fought against it on the wrong level. What else does she say? She's not done yet. I agree with you, and I don't know if she's talking about. I agree with you unless you're talking about rent control, which is a perfect solution to everything. She is all in on rent control. All in. Remember, she is now the director for the mayor's office to protect tenants. She's the director of it. She got appointed. That's her job. She is also a democratic socialist. You actually have at least 2 democratic socialists in power in New York City. And if I'm not mistaken, you actually have several others who are on the city council. I think there was like 4 or 5 that I remember. There might have been more than that. Now I'm starting to think about it. I think there might have been 8. But whatever the case, there were somewhere between 4 and 8, at least, democratic socialists on their city council. Now, their city council has quite a few people, so 4 to even 8, I don't think necessarily means that you're just going to get a pile of democratic socialism all of a sudden. But we can see that it's getting started. What else? Let's last one here. I don't really disagree with this, but a couple of things. I think, quote, pass really strong rent control, end quote, is a more effective way to shrink the value of What? She wants to shrink the value of real estate, then reducing rezoning applications, which have a mixed results vis-a-vis property values. Think about that for a second. Cea Weaver, the director of the mayor's office for to protect tenants, has said that she wants to use rent control to shrink the value of real estate. Hello? This is what you got. Now, I am somewhat vindicated in all of this. By the way, I'll just point out the link to Michelle's full thread that has a whole bunch more. It's in the show notes. So you can go check it out. Okay? But I'm somewhat vindicated. And I could not help myself to talk about this. I'm leaving names of the guilty out. So if you're in the comments or you come in later and you know who I'm talking about, please don't name names. Please do me that. Please do that courtesy. Okay, we want to focus on the ideas. So several years ago, I made this social media post. Let me put it up on the screen here. This is such an awesome post. So this is back in, I think, 2022. And this is, so if you can, you might not be able to read the quote, the post that I'm quoting here, but it says, government tells landlords they aren't allowed to collect rent, continues to charge property taxes. Landlords, okay, I have to sell my property. Who can afford this right now? Government, whoa, weird. I can afford that. Wow, lucky timing, huh? So totally random. Serendipity, huh? And so basically, Sunnyside here is kind of poking at this eviction moratorium that they had a while back. Remember during COVID, they had the eviction moratorium? So I said landlords should band together and refuse to pay property taxes. There shouldn't be any property taxes, but there are. And this would make a great effort to push back against the moratorium. That's what I said. And then that got reposted. Someone, in response, somebody reposted that to a local real estate group. Okay? And here was one of the responses from somebody in the group who does very well in real estate. Here is what they said in response. They said, this has nothing to do with our local government. But if everyone avoids property taxes, I will gladly buy the homes at the tax deed auction. Of course you will. And that's fine. Like, I'm not complaining about that. Okay, don't get me wrong. I love the free market. Doesn't mean I like everything that everybody does on the free market, but I love it. And you're more than welcome. Like, if somebody doesn't pay their taxes and something, well, let's put it this way. If something is up for sale, you are more than welcome to buy it. How about that? Okay, so I take no issue with that. My issue that I took with this was just like, okay, a lot of this group was set up to help each other. And I'm trying to tell you how to help each other. And people were like, I got laughed at, got made fun of. Like, oh, we'll just buy all your properties. It's like 2 or 3 people made a similar comment like this. Like, I'll be happy to buy your stuff. Okay, then you're not getting it. Okay? So then here's what I said in response. I said this, and I'm putting it up on the screen here. It's a little bit longer. I said, for those saying I'll buy your properties at tax deed auctions, that's why I said band together. There's power in numbers. And the reason the CDC order is in place is because numbers of landlords are not banding together. It would seem to me pushing back makes the landscape better for all investors, a message I've heard repeatedly in various seminars and meetings. Like, I went to some of these meetings and they will literally say, hey, you need to get together, you need to go to your city council, you need to talk to them, you need to do this, you need to do that. So I threw out an idea just kind of off the cuff, right? And then I go on to say, it will only hurt or has nothing to do with local government. So that's one of the other criticisms. So I respond and I said, it's quite common for state and local communities to push back against federal edicts. Marijuana is probably the least divisive example. 38 states have legalized it to some degree, yet the federal government has done almost nothing to enforce their own laws. By the way, look where we are now. I think we have more than 38 states that have legalized it, and Trump just moved it from Schedule 1 to a Schedule 3. Organizing works. Pushing back from your local community works. You can buy all the properties you want. I was right. I went on to say, but it didn't start out with 38 states. Regardless of your political leanings, over the years, mayors, sheriffs, and governors have successfully pushed back against the federal government for a variety of reasons. Unless things have changed, the quickest way to get the attention of local and state governments is money. And it goes a long way if they aren't willing to enforce federal orders. And then I ended it by saying, admittedly, my comment was more off the cuff and not intended to be the solution. That doesn't mean it cannot or should not be a springboard for something better. That's what I had said back when people were making fun of me. And my point was, you can and you should organize. Why? Because your opponents are. Mamdani is an avowed Democratic Socialist. Cea Weaver is as well. The Democratic Socialists, they organized extremely well. And they got Mamdani elected. They have basically taken over New York City in some sense. And now we have Mamdani coming out and he's using language like saying, hey, are you being price gouged? You know, because of all these fees. And he's not addressing why might landlords be implementing some of these fees. Why might they do that? Well, I'll just throw out one just for an example. So a lot of landlords will charge a fee in order for you to fill out an application. Why is that? Because they might get a lot of applications and then they have to take those applications and they have to run them through various databases and they have to do a review of them. It's not like if I go and I put in my resume at a company and they read the resume and they determine based on the resume whether they like me or not. Now, they might do some additional research and they might say, oh, let's go check out this guy's name and see if he's got a podcast and he's talking crazy stuff online, you know, if that were to happen. Like, but that's not a guarantee. That they might or they might not do that. But at least in the old-fashioned days, back in my day, they would just look at it and say, let's bring this person in. Then they would look at a different one and say, let's not bring this person in. Okay? And so it's not like landlords are just looking at the rental application and saying, yeah, I think I'd like to talk to this person more. They go and they search out information. Does this person have any felonies? Are they a violent criminal? Have they had prior evictions? By the way, if you get rid of all evictions, that's going to be terrible for landlords, because landlords want people that haven't been evicted. Why? Because that means they're not trouble. Why? Because at the end of the day, a landlord really, what they really want is a tenant to come in, treat their property pretty decent. I'm a landlord, so I know these things. We want you to treat the property pretty decent. Now, the better you treat it, the more happy I will be, right? But I get it, you know, and some people are rough on houses and whatever, okay? But if you treat it fairly well, then I'm content. Because when you leave, I have to prepare it for a new tenant. I might have to go in and do some paint. And, you know, I might have to paint the walls because you've scuffed them up quite a bit and they're just not looking very good. I can't rent that to somebody who's brand new coming in, you know. I may have to replace some flooring depending on how rough you were on the flooring, on the carpet, or on whatever the flooring is. Maybe you damaged some of it and it has to be replaced, right? I have to do all of those things. And so what landlords want is a tenant's going to come in and generally treat the property pretty decent, but most importantly, pay their bills. That's the biggest thing. And I will tell you, okay, I want you to get in close, guys. See, can I do this? I think I can do this. Okay, let's do this. I want you to, I shouldn't do this, but I'm going to do it anyway because, you know, I'm me. That's it. So let's do this. Hold on. This is such a bad idea, but I'm going to do it anyway. Okay, watch this. I want you to get in very close. Okay, I want you to listen to me. Okay, because I'm going to tell you a dirty little secret. If you come in as a renter and you pay your bill on time, every time, and you treat the property fairly well, right? You don't smash windows, you don't burn things down, you don't destroy it. If you do those two things and you happen to be a pain in the ass, a lot of landlords will tolerate it because it's the devil that you know versus the devil that you don't know. And we might say, well, this person, they're a bit of a nuisance. They get on my nerves. They call me for trivial stuff, but they do pay their bill every month. And every time I go over there, the property looks pretty decent. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and keep that person. I'm not going to get rid of them because I would rather have that person than somebody else who may damage the property altogether and cause me a lot more headache. Okay. So that's the dirty little secret. And it shouldn't be all that secretive. Okay? So landlords, like, I know that there are landlords that are out there that are the bad guy. There are landlords that you call them up and you're like, hey, man, the door's falling off the hinges. The front door. We're not safe here because we can't even keep out an intruder. And then there are landlords out there that'll be like, yeah, we'll get around to it. And then they hang up the phone and they go on about their way. Right? There are bad landlords. And so what Republicans should have done, what any challenger to Mamdani should have done, is they should have said, yes, there is a problem. Here's how we're going to address that problem. And here's how we're going to do our best to make sure that it is actually fair between renter and landlord. But instead, they wanted to talk about rice and eating it with your fingers. So this is what you got. You got two people in there now that are now running at breakneck speed. This is first week. It's not his first week isn't even over. And they're already organizing to tell all the renters out there, all the tenants, come to our meetings because we're going to hear you out. And their director of the mayor's office to protect tenants, that person has said repeatedly that they basically want a renter's world. Now, I don't think in the long run renters are going to like it, but here's the catch. Because, like, I've seen some videos and people are like, oh, I don't think they're going to like it. Here's the catch. I don't think they're going to dislike it immediately. Because, number one, Mamdani is addressing real problems. If you're paying your rent and your landlord isn't fixing the property, that is a problem. That needs to be addressed. And he's the one that has a solution now, and he has the power to do it. So he's going to offer the solution. So at this point, think of it in terms of a timeline, a numerical timeline, right? Some of these renters are in the negative. And I don't mean like in terms of rent and what they owe. I mean in terms of the quality of the place that they live in, they're at a negative. So if Mamdani brings them to his where he wants, he's going to bring them up at least to a 0, perhaps a 1 or a 2, somewhere around there. And then as we go along, as we start tipping that balance, eventually, sometime in the future, not near future, eventually, then the socialist will start saying, okay, now that we've resolved some of the problems of the allegedly fat cat landlords, now we can deal with all the renters. Now we can implement all the rules that we really want, right? And so will it affect the landlords more? Yes. Because they don't like individualism. They don't like property ownership. They don't like capitalism. They believe practically everything falls under white supremacy. By the way, if you want to, I think it's still relevant today. You can go back to like episode like 35. I did a book review on white fragility by Robin DiAngelo, and you might be surprised at how much of the language that you're hearing today she wrote about a long time ago. And I point out that their beef really isn't so much with like white supremacy and white power and white whatever, white fragility, all those good terms. Race is really not their concern. Those are effectively code words, and I proved it with her own book. And I think I also used her paper that she wrote when she coined the term white fragility. So go check that out. I don't remember if it was exactly episode 35, but it was somewhere around there. It was like in the mid to late 30s. So we're on episode 631. So I did this a long time ago. Okay? And I would even maybe encourage you to read the book, because if you don't understand your opponent, how can you fight them? If you don't address the problems, the real problems that your opponent is addressing, then who do you think the people that you're trying to vote for you, to get on board, to support you, who do you think they're going to go to? If you have a bunch of renters who feel like the Republicans have no answers, or they have bad answers, it's just like, well, that's just the market. It's not really a good answer, right? And for a lot of reasons, not to say that the market is bad in itself, but the market is so distorted right now with intervention from government that it's not as simple as just saying the market will take care of it. Because no, the market doesn't take care of it, because it's got too many tentacles from the government in it. So that's not a good answer. Because when people look at it, they see that they just see the effects of all of that, and the effects are not in their favor, or they're not even balanced in many cases. So that's not a good answer. So when these people, when they're looking at two potential candidates, and they're like, well, who should I choose? Well, the answer is obvious. You choose the one that's at least speaking to you. That's what he's doing, and he's still doing it. So people got all butthurt about, I can't beat this drum hard enough, because I don't think people on the right have learned their lesson just by looking at immigration. They're not learning their lesson. We went from, oh my gosh, I'm going to do a little tangent here. We went from, oh my gosh, we've got Tren de Aragua taking over apartment complexes in Colorado. We went from, we got to take care of these bad guys, these people that are here objectively engaging in violence, which I agree with. We have to deal with that, and we should remove those people. We went from that to people suggesting that the way to beat Mamdani was to deport him, revoke his citizenship and deport him. We went from dealing with Tren de Aragua taking over apartment complexes to saying, oh, everybody from Venezuela now needs to be deported. Probably not going to happen, folks. Don't count on it. You weren't addressing real issues that real people were dealing with. You were addressing this pop culture version of problems. That's what you were doing. You were addressing your own selfishness. Oh, he's a socialist. He's a communist. I'm going to, I'm going to say it. The former chair of the Libertarian Party posted about Mamdani just some critical comment about, kind of dismissing him because he was a communist. And I was like, I think we need to get our terms accurate. Number one, he's not a communist. He's a democratic socialist. They're happy to make sure that you know the distinction. And I said, that's important not because of the nitpicking, but because it lowers the credibility that you have. If you just run around screaming, commie, 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 red scare, and then someone's like, yeah, these are the communists over here. This person's actually a democratic socialist. It has a specific meaning. And look, their policies line up with this specific meaning, even if the end result ends up being communism. You need to address and look credible. And the former chair of the Libertarian Party, of all parties, could not bring herself to at least speak accurately and recognize, by the way, these words aren't really dirty words anymore. In fact, if you call somebody a communist, the fact that democratic socialist is not a dirty word, that gives them a fallback. If both of them were dirty words, then you could probably use either one interchangeably and it'd be okay. Because you could be like, oh, you're a communist. And they could go, well, actually, I'm a democratic socialist. And then you could go, yeah, okay, that's just as bad. Here's why. Right? But a lot of young people, they're like, it isn't so bad. They've got some ideas. They're addressing this. They're gonna improve public housing for everybody. They're gonna stop the price gouging from our landlords. They're gonna make sure that the landlords are fixing the property when I'm paying them my good hard-earned money every month. Yeah, a lot of people are gonna buy into that, because at the end of the day, people aren't going to care what you call it. They want answers. So to the real estate crowd that made fun of me, I was right, you were wrong. Now, I might not have had the perfect answer in the moment, but the idea that you should be organizing and you should be pushing back against some things, that was absolutely correct, because your opponents did. And yeah, maybe they didn't do it here in Jacksonville, okay? And maybe we got a while to wait. And I know that our governor is like, oh, we're not allowing any of that stuff to come in. He really can't stop it, because once it gets going and once it gets momentum in New York City, people will start leaving. And they'll say, yeah, for whatever reason, right? They will leave because maybe it doesn't turn out to be as good as they thought it was. They'll leave because they got a new opportunity, whatever. They'll move. Like me, I used to live in Richmond, Indiana, and I worked for a company. And I decided, hey, if I lose my job here, I don't think there are sufficient opportunities to compensate. So therefore, I was like, maybe I should move to a different city where there might be more opportunities. And so I asked the company that I worked for, I said, hey, we have a branch in Charlotte, North Carolina. Since my job requires me to travel to a lot of different branches anyway, do you care if I move to that facility? Move to that city and work out of that facility? And they were like, yeah, well, that's fine. We don't care, because you're traveling anyway for your job. And so I did that on purpose for two reasons. No, one, because I wanted to get away from the cold weather. It was far warmer in Charlotte. And then two, because I wanted to make sure that I had more opportunities for myself. And then once I got there, I found true love. And then my wife did the same thing. She had an opportunity where she was working in Charlotte, and she found an opportunity in Jacksonville. And she was like, yeah, I like that opportunity. I'm going to take it. And we were together. And she was like, by the way, I'm not a really big fan now all of a sudden of long-term relationships. And so then I was like, well, I'm not letting this one go. So then I moved to Florida. I moved to Jacksonville. So here I am, right? So, and what did I do? I brought all my ideas with me. And some of my ideas have changed over time. You know, I think somewhere around that time, I was starting to get acquainted with libertarian ideas. But I moved from Richmond to Charlotte as a more Republican conservative. And then somewhere there, I started moving in the direction of being a libertarian. And then when I got to Jacksonville, I really leaned into libertarianism. And so here I am in Jacksonville with libertarian ideas. Don't tell me a similar situation cannot play out with people who have bought into democratic socialism. So can democratic socialism spread from New York City to other places? Absolutely. And can it happen at a faster rate than some guy moving from a small town of 40,000 people to Charlotte, North Carolina, eventually to Jacksonville? Absolutely. I don't know how many people off the cuff live in New York City, but quite a few. And people move all the time for a variety of reasons. And all that needs to happen is they need to buy into these ideas. And then they move, they take those ideas with them. People from California, they do the same thing. That's why Florida had the running meme a long time ago where they were like, hey, you can move from New York, you can move from California, don't bring your policies. Well, good luck with that. So the answer is absolutely get together with people, organize, and push back against bad ideas. And in my opinion, what's happening right now will be seen as a bad idea in years to come. Now, will it be a bad idea? Will it look very clearly a bad idea, demonstrably, in the short term? I don't think so. Because again, if you in any way solve people's problems, they feel like you've done something. And I said this before about these socialist ideas. All that a socialist idea has to do is work just a little bit. And then from there, people will have a taste and they will believe a little bit more is necessary. And the people in power, they will blame everything on the fact that we're not giving enough. How do I know this? Because that's what they do already. Think about every school ever. Any failing school, what do they always say? We don't pay teachers enough. We don't have enough money. We don't this. We don't. They always need more resources. It's never, perhaps this idea was a failing idea from the beginning. It is always, we just need more resources. If we throw more resources at it, well, by golly gee, this idea will work. They never come back. The same people that are implementing these ideas never come back and say, yeah, I got that wrong. Actually, we need to shift gears altogether. This was not a good idea. We're going to do this other idea that we see has worked out pretty well over here. That doesn't happen. That only happens by the opposing group if they have their act together. And, well, people haven't. All right, let me get into some comments here. I'll remind you guys, I cannot yet show the comments on the screen like I used to. I'm still working on that, but I am now on Restream. Restream works way better. I enjoy it so far. It is day 2, so temper that a little bit. But Chuck and Money says, Matt Taibbi has been going hard making comparisons to Russia, where he spent some time and knows the language and consequences of socialism. Absolutely. Here's the caveat to that, though. What we cannot do as opponents of socialism and communism, we cannot use the extreme as if that's going to be the immediate outcome. This is why I keep saying we have to we have to present better ideas. We have to get people behind them. We have to organize because your opponents are organizing. If you're not organizing, you are on the losing end already. And so, and it's not that I disagree. It's not that I don't believe that socialism and communism lead to some of the worst atrocities. They do. But you have to remember that we're here. This worst atrocity is over here. Let me put it in the screen a little bit better, right? So we're here. There's this entire middle area. And it's easy to fool people and make them believe they're on a good path. And it's difficult because these ideas, they sound attractive. I mean, think about it. If you're a renter and you've got an objectively terrible landlord, what idea that says I'm going to punish the bad landlord doesn't sound good? They all do. So that's what Republicans and libertarians should be doing. They should be saying, we're going to address this. And I think there are ways that they can address it that fit within the Republican ideology. I think there are ways that can address it that fit within the libertarian ideology. They will be different, and you will have to make your case, but I think they do exist. We have to do that. And we have to say, here's why this idea. And we can't just go communist, socialist, and we can't just say bread lines either. Because if people don't see bread lines if people don't see bread lines at any time during Mamdani's tenure, guess what? You will have self-defeated, because everybody will look at you and laugh, and they'll be like, ha, 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 there was no bread lines. You guys just don't know what you're talking about. Like, they just did it wrong over there. It was never, real socialism, real communism has never been tried. That's going to be the answer, because these things take time to play out. And we have to consider that when we're making our arguments. What else we got? Let's see. But if you can take my lunch from me, Keith says, but I can't take it from you by force, then how is that fair? Oh, yeah, racism. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, the socialists, they're going to engage in taking from one person and giving it to another, and they're not going to allow that person to take it back. So they're going to take from the landlords, and they're going to in some way either give it to government or they're going to give it to the renters, and they're not going to allow the landlords to take it back. And they will say, oh, if you want it, then white supremacy. And this is why I said maybe you should go listen to that episode. I think it was like 35, 38, it might have been 38. Where I talked about white fragility, and I pointed all this out, and I did not make up anything. I did not say she probably means this. I quoted her own words from the book, and I said, here is what she said. She opposes individualism. She opposes capitalism. She opposes private property in the same way that Cea Weaver does, right? She opposes these things, at least for the little people, right? It turns out that a lot of the people that support these ideas, they have some fanciful ideas on how they will be treated differently, right? That's a conversation for another day. All right, Keith finally says, glad Liberty Dad is back. Yeah, I'm glad to be back too. It was a nice break, but I am glad to be back. So thank you everyone that is tuning in, and I look forward to growing this channel and really delivering some good content. So with that being said, I think that's a wrap for this episode. I don't know that there was anything inspiring here necessarily, or maybe there was. Maybe you're inspired to go out and organize. It's one thing to you can't just criticize people. That's kind of what I do. That's kind of what a podcast is about in some ways, is criticizing people. But hopefully there was some encouragement here to go out and get with people and say, let's organize. Let's push back against bad ideas. We're not pushing back against socialist or communist. You're pushing back against bad ideas, and you're pushing back with better ideas. That is how you win. You have to organize, and you can't laugh at people if they come up with an idea that sounds crazy on the surface. Yeah, maybe you're a wealthy real estate mogul, and you're like, I'll buy your properties. But if you want to stay a wealthy real estate mogul, perhaps you listen to me. Whether you want, how do I say it? Whether you're watching live now or you come back later, please drop me a comment at some point after the show. Let me know your thoughts. It helps out the algorithm, and I like reading the comments. Did I miss anything? Do I need to offer correction? Maybe you want to be promiscuous with praise, or as some people will do, you will make a comment and I won't understand it. I've had a few of those where I'm like, is this an insult or are they complimenting me? I don't really know. Whatever the case, I'm all ears. But with that being said, I'm out, folks. I will see you tomorrow when I have with Christina on the show. So have a good one, folks. You know that I'm all about supporting organizations that hold my values. Make sure you head on over to blackgunsmatter.shop. They've got apparel, stickers, and more. Use the code LibertyDad, all one word, at checkout to score a 10% discount. Or just hit the referral link in the show notes. That'll make it so much easier. Remember, I'm not just a voice on a mic. I'm a dad who's working hard to deliver to you the best libertarian content. Connect with me on Linktree, where you'll find links to my Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee, because, every bit helps keep this show rolling. Plus, you can find me on my other platforms to stay in the loop. With your help, this show, The Message of Liberty, will be seen and heard
by more people. As always, I appreciate you tuning in and look forward to seeing you in the next episode.